Hello, this is DIY Reptiles, and today I am going to be feeding my baby geckos along with my bearded dragon and some of my adult geckos. So I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so to start off, we're going to be looking at Elizabeth, my leopard gecko, and I'm feeding her some dubia roaches. I breed dubia roaches, so I don't actually have to buy food for Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is my only leopard gecko that I own. She's female, and she just is a cool. She's the icon of the channel, like the channel icon dealio circle. That's her, and she lives in this 40-gallon breeder bioactive tank. And I started breeding dubia roaches with the intent of getting a leopard gecko, and now I breed them, and I can have a bearded dragon, and that's sustainable, and a tokay gecko, and all the crested geckos and everything. So there's a lot with that, which is pretty cool. But she's eating it with the powder and everything, and that's how that kind of goes. So down below I have the bearded dragon, the temporary bearded dragon tank, and I rarely film Elizabeth because she kind of just hides out in her hide a lot. So I thought this footage was pretty cool, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So next up is the bearded dragon. Occasionally, very rarely, I let Richard, my bearded dragon, Richard was adopted. The leopard gecko, somebody gave it to me. This one was adopted from a humane society. I occasionally let it soak in the 125-gallon community fish tank, and as you can see, he's drinking. So you can see his mouth moving. That's because he needed a drink. So I set him in here, and he kind of swims around a little bit, and he fluffs out, or he puffs out he fills himself full of air, and then he can kind of swim. And it's just interesting to see, but I only do it rarely. But yeah, so I wanted to show that, and it's just kind of a cool sight to see, but I only do that very rarely. So here is, I believe, Finnick eating a dubia roach, which is really cool to see, especially early on, because at the point of, like, a lot of these are just random clips that I filmed within a span of a couple weeks of just animals that I caught eating. And this is one of those things, but it's cool to look back and see because it's quite a few months later now, and Finnick's a lot bigger. Well, Christopher doesn't seem to be too interested. He did at first, and he looked at it, but he did not go for it. Finnick went for it right away and ate the roach. So roaches are now on the menu for these guys, and I'll be trying to feed them, chew them consistently to try to get some supplements into them, and also it's just a little bit of an easier way to feed them, and also to provide them protein, make them grow a little bit faster or something like that. So that should be good. Now we are on to the Darwin babies. These were born in the last video, and these are from Darwin and Leonard. Leonard unfortunately passed away before these guys were born, and before she even laid the eggs, I think. So it's really interesting to have these, especially because these two, they both end up to be females, because like I said, this was filmed many months ago, and they're a lot older now, just like the Chris and Finnick. But they both end up to be females, and they both have this really nice dark pattern that they got from Leonard. So it's really cool to see, because they're kind of continuing on that line, I guess. But I used to hand feed them when they were babies, and especially these two I did for a long time, because originally I was planning on keeping the first two Teddy babies and the first two Darwin babies. And I say that Darwin's these guys' mother, Teddy's the mother of Chris and Finnick, but I don't end up doing that. I only keep one of each. So I still have Finnick, and I still have one of these two. I'm not really sure. I believe the darker one, and then the other ones I have rehomed along with, the babies that I produce over time. So it was kind of a cool experience to do this at one point, but as the amount of babies I produce grew, it didn't make any sense to do this anymore. And the babies eat really well on their own, so I basically just put them in and let them fend for themselves, and they figure it out just fine. So that's really cool, but it was also a cool experience to do this, and it was a nice thing to film because these guys are so very cute. I mean, just look at, they're so tiny. And this one, they have Dalmatian spots out of nowhere. I don't know which, I don't think either parent had Dalmatian spots. This is probably the one that I sold off, because I sold off the one that was more spotty, and then I kept the one that was darker, and its name is Goliad, which its name's always been Goliad, but I kept Goliad and that one I sold off. Then we're back to Finnick. Finnick I kept. Chris I sold a while back now. It was a young female, and also Finnick is a female as well. So I found this piece of wood in the iguana's cage, and I went to add it to this Crested Gecko enclosure because it goes with all the pieces of wood in here. So I set it right here, and it fits perfectly up against this and on that piece, and it's flat, as you can see, and the geckos can climb on it. So I'm really hoping that if I start putting this, it looks like she just ate some food on her own. I'm really hoping that if I can get like a plate or something to stay here, and if I feed Teddy on it every single night, eventually she'll start coming to that when she's hungry, and then I can just start adding in food. Linus is a different story. I don't expect him to do anything on his own. I'll hand feed him, but I'm trying to do this. I want to do the same thing with Darwin, so that I can get them eating on their own, and then they can control all of that and not have to deal with it. So that would be great, and I'm just going to leave food there tonight, but I think this is kind of cool how I have it set up here. I'm going to try to build ledges for the other tanks and like glue them on or whatever. So I got to feed Linus still. And here, Chris is finally taking an interest in dubia roaches, and I still continue to feed dubia roaches. I basically just always have them as an option in the babies' enclosures, and Finnick doesn't actually eat insects very often anymore. She completely stains herself with the Crested Gecko diet with insects, but I occasionally release insects into her bioactive enclosure with her tank mates, and that's kind of how I do things with her. So my goal with the babies is to raise them with eating insects, and then to kind of move them towards eating more of the gecko diet, because that is what people tend to feed. And when I'm sending them off to new homes, I want them to be able to do well and sustain themselves. Okay, so that's going to be it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed. These are just a bunch of clips that I filmed many months ago for just around the place that I put together, because it's like a nice feeding video, feeding the animals, and they're cute and adorable, and it's great. And that's why we keep them. So I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, like it down below. If you have any comments or concerns, in the comments below. And if for more content, then subscribe.